Good evening, everyone, and I'd like to thank you. I'd like to welcome you to our Marin LAFCO meeting of April 13th. And our roll call, we have Luke Hayes, yes. Matt Brown,
yes.
Chris Burdick,
here.
Jack Baker,
here.
Craig Murray,
here.
Sashi McEntee,
here.
Dennis Fredoni,
here.
And myself. So we do have a quorum. And first thing on the agenda is our service recognition, and that is going to our esteemed Chris Burdick. And this is a sad day for all of us. And anyways, the service is just inestimable, what you've given to LAFCO. And I know that Keen has a few words to say, but I particularly am going to miss your wit, your sage wisdom, your little asides, and just all the expertise that you've lent to LAFCO over so many years, and the trek that you make out here from West Marin for all the meetings. And
it is a dip in cultural levels.
I apologize for that. I apologize for that. We tried, Chris. We tried, but we're on the wrong side of the tracks here. You just heard the train go by too. And so, anyways, you are sorely going to be missed I know by all of us. And I hope you enjoy your respite from these evenings, and that you don't make yourself a stranger. And Keen?
Yeah, so I wanted to mention, so this is somewhat a preamble to a much grander activity that we'll communicate with the Commission. Hopefully in the next few weeks we can all get together for a late lunch, early dinner in West Marin, and so be on the outlook for that. But certainly I know from staff's perspective, we're going to miss you, Chris. You've been a straight shooter. You've got a great sense of humor. And in talking to Rachel, we did a little research. So you came aboard in 2003. So you've been on LAFCO 14 years. So we estimated, we looked at our minutes, you've been to over 100 LAFCO meetings. That alone is an impressive feat.
No wonder my wife is on
You have worked with at least 36 different commissioners in that time. And I think if we pulled all of them, as Carla mentioned, you have an independent take on things. It helps break out any thoughts of groupthink. And I know personally, when I was doing the interview process, Chris was on the recruitment committee with Jeff Blanchfield. And I had my own natural reservations about making a big move to Marin. And we went out to eat at that Basque restaurant in Santa Venetia. And when you ordered that second cocktail at lunch, I said, this guy is impressive. Now, Jeff was only having mineral water, so it was being offset. But I said, this guy's going to be fun to work for. So you have been. So again, we'll have a much more a grand time in West Marin when we all get together, and we'll go from there. But I'm glad that we were able to acknowledge the last of the 100+ meetings for you.
I just wanted to add in too. Got to know Chris sitting at some point at the kids' table a few years ago, and very quickly, he's got a great sense of humor, and he kind of picks up on the things that are really important. Sometimes things that are a little more complicated or seem to be, but he kind of homes in on the stuff that really is most important, most critical. But just he's a good guy, smart. And fortunately, he's managed to kind of his vast knowledge of the law. He's managed to kind of contain that in our meetings and kind of focus it, on certain aspects. Otherwise, we'd be there all night.
Oh yeah,
all the stuff we do.
I do go on.
Yeah, well, no, you've done great. So, and I'm sure we'll kind of, or at least I kind of see you occasionally, maybe lunch or something. So thanks for being with us.
And I add, in addition to all that, you wear great watches.
Watch your step, and when you get that fixed.
We have to talk about the watches that we're
Chris, I always appreciate your sage perspective on things, and it's really, to me, as a newer member of this board, I really appreciate your wisdom, so I want to say thank you for
so much.
So you may know Chris has been a neighbor, a longtime friend, big-time supporter.
Fellow client, fellow commuter.
And fellow commuter. We commuted to LAFCO many times. And, I found out the first time he drove that I had to drive the remainder of the time because we weren't going to get home till midnight. The way he got driving. Anyway, so I relieved him of his driving duties at that point. But we always had fun, and many times we stopped and visited the fire chief or the fire union. I think in Corte Madera a couple times.
We're in Joe's.
We're in Joe's.
We meet the same Thursdays.
So it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your service, and we're going to see you around. I know that. So, thanks.
Chris has been very helpful on personnel matters, MCRF issues, anything relating to labor issues and your experience. And I had good fun talking to Chris about the West Marin report. And I actually had good fun joshing with Chris because he seemed to, in true Marin fashion, walk in with Birkenstocks and things that a lot of folks can't see under the table. It's fun. Chris is a very relaxed guy. It's good to work with someone who's very relaxed and knowledgeable, so a true professional. He's going to be missed here. So.
Well, thank you all. I've had a very good time for 14 years. It's being on this commission, I've met a lot of different people and some very really smart people. And I would say to people who are being interviewing for the job tonight that this is a very collegial organization. It tries very hard to do things by consensus, always has. Operates in a very tripartisan manner. I can't remember someone from the board saying, well, the county's position is, or someone from the city saying the cities have to have. And when there are disagreements, people sit down and work them out. And they get almost always resolved, unless poop is involved in it. It's a different matter. But so if you're a nerd who really is interested in local government and enjoys learning about cities and districts and charter cities, general law cities, county, and stuff like that, and is interested, I think you will enjoy this a lot. The commission is very welcoming to its alternates. It expects them to come to every meeting. And this stuff is so complicated, the only way you're going to get a handle on it is by coming to every meeting and reading your packet and listening and absorbing stuff. The commission appoints alternates to committees and expects the alternates to work on committees and to contribute. And there's not much difference from being here and being over there, except you don't vote. I think if I've attended 100+ meetings, I told Mrs. Burke this would be the last one. She and the Doxons were thrilled. I think I voted in like 5 of them. That's about it. Because Mr. Blanchfield does not miss meetings. You know, the other thing I would say, you get packets like this all the time, and the commissioners almost invariably come having read all of it and being prepared, and thoroughly prepared. And, when I interviewed for this gig 14 years ago, I actually knew what LAFCO was. Sometimes I knew a little bit more about LAFCO than I really wanted to know, having been through the whole East Palo Alto morass way back when. I represented the deputy sheriffs, and folks in East Palo Alto wanted the deputies out and wanted their own police department. That resolved crime immediately. And so when the commissioners asked why I wanted to do this, I said, well, I know absolutely nothing about land use, planning, zoning, or real estate at all. I really have no interest in learning much about land use, planning, zoning, but I know a lot about local government and cities and counties, and one of the jobs of the commission is to help rationalize local government and make it more efficient. We don't need 14 fire departments. We don't need 10 police departments. There's some other things we don't need a lot of either. And so I hope that whoever takes this job will continue to make that a matter of their interest and concern. But as I said, I've had a grand time. And it's always been intellectually very stimulating. And I can't think of a person in the commission I worked with who wasn't a fun person to work with, who was always polite and respectful, to me and everybody else in the commission. And that's a pretty rare thing in government nowadays. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Okay, we'll move along to the agenda review. If nobody has anything that they want to pull from the agenda, then we'll continue on for open time. And this portion is where we invite anybody that has anything to speak on other than what's already on the agenda. Is there anyone that would like to speak?
Yes.
Okay, if you would please step up to the podium and state your name. And we have 3 minutes.
Hello, happy Thursday, third day of Hanukkah if you're keeping count. And usually when I go in front of the boards, I like to bring a little bit of the spiritual teachings. Sausalito City Council is my specialty now. And it's because I live on the anchorage there. They're called anchor outs. And it's ironic that now the anchor outs are protecting a port, because the old saw is that sailors and boats rust in port. They both do.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you, and I apologize. Will you please state your name?
My name is Jeff Jacob Chase.
Thank you.
A friend invited me to this meeting, and he's not here. I'm not really surprised by that, but I was in the neighborhood, so I decided to drop by. I read what the mission of this board is. It said first to discourage sprawl. Every county in California has one of these boards. And I looked through the budget and the things that you're going to be discussing today, particularly about wastewater, about sewage. And the vote in Sausalito, first reading of a bill to ban the anchor outs and begin also requiring certificate of occupancy and planning department okay for changing anything on the houseboat, certificate of occupancy for all of the houseboats. They don't know that yet because I haven't told them. Some of these bills are very difficult to read, and I'm glad that your website was very, very nicely done. I talked to the guy who did it today, and I'm happy to say that. So I looked at what your board does, and it says that you change boundaries. That whenever a fire department or a police department or a city wants to change their boundaries, annexation, etc., you deal with that. Also, you improve efficiency and reduce the cost of urban services. That was number 2. And 4 was change organization. Now, the vote to ban the anchor outs, and as an anchor out, and I've been there for a little while on a 26-foot sloop, sometimes these local agencies will pass a law and not enforce it. But that, I think, makes people respect the law a lot less. And the people on the anchorage already have that issue of how much respect we give to our leaders. And of course, as human beings, all respect is due. Right now, the issue is the same here in this local board as it is on the state level and on the federal level. The word, and I think this word was used a lot a while ago, and now it's starting to get some more currency. The word is called emoluments. And what that means is when somebody with a public position uses it for private gain. That's the simple way of saying it. So at the end of the meeting, I followed the Cambridge City Council, who voted 7-1 to investigate President Trump for breaking the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution. That's Article 9. And the idea is that this isn't just happening in Washington. This happens here too. I looked at the budget here. I can't say in the few hours that I spent doing that, I can come to an understanding of it. You understand a lot more about it than I do. The man I talked to who did the website, he got paid for it. I found that out. And I think that's great. Now I'm going to take one example, and this is the most important example. There's a group called the M Group. They've been paid now $750,000 in Sausalito to come up with a general plan. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I won't count all the people here, in addition to 92 people working in the planning departments of both the County of Marin and Sausalito. To me, it seems the definition of emoluments when there's been a group that's hired to do something that the county and the cities and this board already can do. That there are so many people that are involved in planning. Why is this a payment? I understand that a school can't function without pencils and books and notebooks, and somebody's got to make those, and that's not going to be the government most of the time. But when it comes to mind work, when it comes to lawyers, when it comes to people producing papers that have to do with plans, that's something completely different. A person is being paid for their knowledge. I think we have a lot of knowledge. I feel that we have that in this room. We have it in the county offices, and we have it in the city offices. So I think that the Emoluments Clause, which is in the California Constitution as well, is being broken when we hire an outside group to do what the inside groups are very capable of doing. So thank you for listening to me, and I appreciate you having this open for public comment.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that would like to speak at the time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move along. Now we are on to the consent calendar, and these items are grouped together and are considered ministerial, and they are subject to a single motion unless there's somebody from either the commission or the public that would like to pull an item. Craig?
Item 5 on the Special Risk Management Authority. Keen. Thank you. Excuse me. Item 5 on the Special Risk Management Authority. Keen, is there anyone from this board that was interested in?
Okay, can we discuss that? Is that not a big thing that Keen could respond to you on that?
Yeah, it should be very simple.
Okay.
To date, no one's shown interest.
Okay.
Okay.
And do you know, has anyone from Marin LAFCO served on the board?
Not at least in recent time. But I can look into that, and I think if our recommendation is that you delegate to the chair the ability to do nominations all the way through the deadline on May 5th. So we certainly can follow up with that answer and anyone's interest to work with the chair on some of those.
Okay, so perhaps you keep that open as recommended.
Okay, that we'll approve this with the consent calendar, but bring it up to the commission again, and maybe send out some notices.
I'll do some follow-up well before the May 5th deadline.
Yeah.
Great.
Very good.
Okay, does that respond to you?
Yeah, I'll
Craig?
move to approve the consent.
Okay, and a second? Jack, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And then our first public hearing item. And this is where we will appoint one of our applicants to replace Chris's spot as alternate. And I want to thank the 4 people that applied. They are all really well qualified. And so it's not going to be an easy task. The one process that's a little different from a normal election is that according to our state laws that govern LAFCO, we have to have at least one vote from the city, from special districts, and from the county, and the councils, in order to elect a person. So rather than just casting a vote, I'm going to ask that you all, with a secret ballot, put down your first, second, third, and fourth choice after we've heard all of our applicants. And that way we will be ensured that we will have a vote from each component of LAFCO. Okay, we decided to do this in alphabetical order.
Oh, Carla,
Yes.
just to clarify, the commissioners that vote are the city, the county, and special district, and the public members do not vote on this one.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Vice Chair Condon, could I just offer a couple of
Yes, please.
additional context? So as Vice Chair Condon noted, this is part of the duty of the city, county, and district members that under state law, you're tasked with appointing not only a regular public member, but an alternate public member as well. This particular position has a term of 4 years and would actually officially start May 2nd. And as the Vice Chair noted, by way of practice, we've come up with a set of standard questions that we've updated for today's meeting, but essentially mirror what the commission has asked in the past. And so we've assigned set times for all 4 candidates. And while you have some set questions, certainly as practice, there's an allowance and expectation for individual follow as you see fit. And then, as mentioned, we do have a ballot process this time, which as we get done with the interviews, perhaps I'll do a quick little reminder of what it entails. But we did put everyone in alphabetical order, starting with Sharon Dawson, and then our next 3 candidates, Wanda Satari, Chris Skelton, and then Stephen Voss.
Okay, thanks, Keen. And again, all the applicants will get the same 3 questions, and then you have the option to ask other questions or follow up to those. So if we could have Mr. Sharon Dawson, who is first, step up to the podium.
You mind if I grab some water?
Not at all.
As Sharon makes his way, if the commissioners, before you ask questions, just make sure that green light on the mic is on.
Okay, and is it Sharon or Sharon?
Sharon.
Sharon, okay.
Can you hear me on can you hear me?
I think it is on.
The green light is on.
Oh, it's on. Perfect.
Is it on?
The green light is on.
Okay. As I said, they will give 3 questions, and you are limited to 3 minutes and 2 minutes for each one, 3 minutes, and then for 2 minutes allowed for anybody that would like to follow up. First one, Sharon, would you please describe what you believe to be the essential role of LAFCO?
I think what the essential role of LAFCO is to pretty much create a body of a group to deal with issues of consolidation, to look at ways of consolidating agencies like Water Department, Fire Protection District, to look at what LAFCO was founded on in 1963 by urban sprawl, to deal with the issue of affordable housing, whether Marin decides to go out or go up, to look at infrastructure issues, which is recently was put in an article, Marin Journal, about the levies, the issues that we have, and also deal with other miscellaneous issues. Pension reform is one big concern that the LAFCO body would be designed to look at. And that's pretty much the top part of the things I would look at, or not to me, that the LAFCO would be designed to look at. So.
Okay, thank you. Second question. Would you please explain and or elaborate on your interest in serving as the alternate regular public member on Marin LAFCO and how it relates to your background and your experiences?
Okay, well, currently I live in District 3, Kate Sears, or Catherine Sears District Supervisor, and that would also be District 10 of Mark Levin's District State Assembly. I live in kind of a unique community. I live in a floating home, and my address is the city of Sausalito. However, I'm very limited on being able to run for any government body in the city of Sausalito. So that puts me in a situation to look at other opportunities, and the other opportunities would be LAFCO. Local agency forming commission. What I bring is I currently work for Alameda County Fire Department. I'm a firefighter. When I got hired in there in 2001, we were 16 stations. Currently, we contract with unincorporated areas, corporate areas. We have a sphere of influence, which is part of mentioning your policy. So I bring some expertise, not only just in fire consolidation, but consolidation of dealing with unincorporated areas, corporate areas, and special districts, and also budgetary items. Our current budget is $125 million a year, and I sit on a committee that deals with about 10% of that budget, which is about $12 million.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And third, if you would please describe what you believe to be the key opportunities and challenges for Marin LAFCO.
I think the key opportunities and challenges really is to deal with the issues that Marin faces in general. We have a issue of affordable housing. The question of being part of LAFCO is how do we address that issue? To my knowledge, since I've been here 3 years, I have not seen a very comprehensive issue to deal with affordable housing. When the issue has been brought up, a lot of times it varies off into different directions. Inequality of income, inequality of race, and it kind of takes on different avenues. But a lot of the people in Marin County are approaching their voting years, their retirement. Currently, I volunteer with Sausalito Village, and that is a task force designed to deal with people in aging, people who want to live in their homes and not live in home or live in fixed living facilities. So I think that's a critical issue that Marin has to deal with. In addition to that, I volunteer at Marin City, the Unified School District there. So the issue of education is critical, and the issue of poverty. I was a child who grew up in a very single-parent household and grew up very poor, so I understand that those are issues. But part of LAFCO is to look at a very comprehensive study and see how we can address those issues or come up with ways for dealing with it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, follow-ups of Sean?
Just a quick question.
Yes, Dennis.
Do you see your job possibly interfering with your position here? I know you have commitments and maybe even go out of state to
No.
fires.
No, I don't see it in a sense of what you're referring to, seasonal fires, wildland fires that happen all the time. No, I think the question, and I'm pretty sure everyone thinks about it, is that am I able to make a decision about a particular fire consolidation, whether I'm for or against it? I think I have no allegiance to any fire agency. So to answer the first question, do I see my job interfering with this? No. But to add on to that, I am able to look at a consolidation, like for example, the Sausalito Fire Protection District, which one you guys voted on 4 years ago, and look at it from a very analytical and comprehensive point of view and a different perspective to see if it's the benefit of the citizens, the benefit of the employees, or if the consolidation makes sense. Not all consolidations, I mean, my personal opinion and my personal experience of going through 10 are very beneficial to the community.
Okay. Yes, Craig.
Sharon, you meant, and within your paperwork, it says Sausalito Village, you serve
Yes.
volunteering there. Can you elaborate on that? And then also the $12 million budget committee you worked on. Maybe.
Sure. So Sausalito Village, when I first moved to Marin 3 years ago, I bought my floating home, and I kind of wanted to get involved in the community, and politically, which was the main goal. So I contacted Theodore, he sat on the city council, they do a rotation in Sausalito. So his wife helped the founder designed this program called Sausalito Village. Pretty much, it's not a physical location, but the goal is to assist people with their daily responsibilities. For example, there was a 90-year-old lady who whistle stop dropped her off in front of her house. She had to go to dialysis every day. So 3 days a week, I would pick her up, take her to dialysis and back. Well, whistle stop would drop her off in front of her house, so it was 90 feet from the driveway to her house. And Sausalito Village would pretty much dispatch volunteers like myself and say, hey, are you available Monday, Wednesday, Friday to take such and such down to dialysis? And they will send you times, very simple things like, many of the people are used to technology, are not used to very complex technology. So things like, could you connect their computer to their printer? Could you take them down to an event that Matthew Turner, which I was part of, helped building, to an event? Things like that. It's all volunteer. So, and it's rewarding and beneficial for me. So that was one of the things. And then your second question, I apologize.
Just, you mentioned you were serving on a
Yes.
committee, and if there's anything related to your prior experience, you
Yes.
are a prior public member,
Okay.
quite a bit of experience working with public unions and.
Okay.
and
Yeah.
to public employment.
Yeah, I'm part of a union. There's nothing to hide about that. I think unions have helped build this country. At the same time, too, I think unions have clashed with city officials when it comes to benefits, wages, and salaries. 250 public safety members die per year. Roughly 25% of fire departments in the United States are paid. When I say paid, that's people who show up every day. The other 75% are volunteer. That is a reality. At the same time, too, when we have had the financial crisis that we had in 2008, employees in general have to come to some clear understandings, and I was one of those employees who saw the reality on the wall, and I took financial losses that affect me and my family to this day. But for the good of the citizens and the service, those losses I don't regret. So that was one question answered. And then I apologize, the $12 million budget one, correct? So my agency, like I said, there's 28 fire stations. We work with 10 agencies. One of the most unique agencies is the Lawrence Livermore Lab, which we provide fire protection for that. And some of those employees in there, like myself, have a security clearance, which is just below a top secret security clearance. It's called a Q. So I sit on several different committees. One of the committees is looking at different policies, the other is looking at budget costs. So I was able to save our agency roughly $100,000, which doesn't sound a lot as being one of the agencies, but simple things like a axe was lost on a fire incident, and the insurance company picked it up to go back to their office, and they want to know who it belonged to. Or things like doing budget costs and analysis, looking at other product suppliers and cutting costs that way. So that is your question.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Sharon, thank you very much. Thank you. Now we'll go on to Wanda Sarti. And did I say that right?
You said it very correctly. I'm just used to being close to the end with the last name. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I find it very rewarding to be second. Thank you. My name is Wanda Sarti. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Wanda. Okay, and to you, the same questions that I posed to Sharon. Would you please describe what you believe to be the essential role of LAFCO?
I have to commend your website, first off. I find it very easy to negotiate. My view of LAFCO, from what I've read, and I read some of the state laws, the CKH, and your mission, and some of your processes and procedures. And although the normal, or the first objective was to prevent urban sprawl or any type of sprawl and to identify districts, that pretty much in Marin doesn't apply terribly much anymore with our so much open space being designated as non-livable. We're not going to be setting up special districts there. But you'd come before LAFCO to establish a special district. LAFCO is responsible for identifying the spheres of influence. They're responsible for identifying areas where there is overlap, and also for doing the, I guess, every 5 year or so reports on the special districts. I just finished a massive one on the water districts. You also have an opportunity to encourage consolidation of fire departments. I understand we're going to have one with the 2 fire departments. Is that Larkspur and something like that? And you did the police, the central police department, where we had our meeting. Other than that, you know, you're responsible for taking care of the special districts, identifying them, and ensuring that they're properly formed.
Okay, thank you. And then, Wanda, will you please explain and/or elaborate on your interest in serving as the alternate regular public member on Marin LAFCO and how it relates to your background and your experiences?
Alrighty, my background, if you had an opportunity to take a look at my resume, is I had been an employee in a large tech company for many years. Involved a lot of analysis. I was a software engineer, and then I moved on to quality, which was the processes and procedures for this tech company. After I retired, I got tired of gardening. I thought I could garden forever, but after a couple of years, I got a little bit tired of gardening, and I was looking for something else to do. After my husband passed away, I felt a great need to be out of the house and amongst people. So I applied to be on the grand jury. In the course of being on the grand jury, I learned a lot about special districts, because that was one of the committees that I'm on, special districts. Being I was working with special districts, I learned a lot about LAFCO. I read a lot of information about LAFCO and about special districts. And I see so many opportunities that are there that are identified on your plans. I've looked at your plans, and a lot of them are there. And I look at an enormous amount of work that you do, and I wonder to myself if there is some way that an alternate can contribute, even if it was just to, I don't know, do your copying for you. I was very impressed by the amount of work that you do with such a small number of employees with a very aggressive schedule. And I think I can contribute to that because of my work on the grand jury. I've done very little in public service, and this would give me an opportunity to contribute to public service because I found you to be a very fascinating organization. I went to a couple of your meetings. I spoke with Keen, and I'm sorry, I don't remember your name.
Rachel.
Rachel. We had some very nice conversations.
Okay, thank you. And all the work that we have in front of us is thanks to Keen and Rachel who give us all this work. Okay, and thirdly, could you please describe what you believe to be the key opportunities and challenges for Marin LAFCO?
I think the primary, one of the major issues that you could possibly deal with, and it would be a challenge, is there are an awful lot of districts that have very similar functions. For example, I understand that it was just a couple of years ago, maybe more than that, that an attempt at consolidation was made for the sewer districts. And because of public protests, everybody seems to want to keep their own sewer district. I talked with Mr. Rojas from the Department of Public Works, and he just is amazed that they wouldn't consolidate these districts. And he discussed with us some of the districts that they have in Los Angeles or Southern California, where they service enormous amounts of people with 1 or 2 districts. And it's things like that that I think are probably your biggest challenge, that and being able to establish a district in the face of all the public involvement, sometimes very vocal and very small numbers of people in a district might be unhappy. And I think think that's a primary challenge. I think one of the challenges that you face is being able to do as much as is done as far as the determined spheres of influence in doing reports with such a small staff. I think that's got to be extremely challenging.
Thank you. Now, are there any follow-up questions to Wanda? Yes, Craig.
So, Wanda, I see that you're a RIB certified internal auditor. You have work experience with
I'm
that?
no longer certified. I haven't kept my certification up, but I was.
Okay, so I'd like to hear a little bit about your auditing experience, and then also that you were instrumental in getting a 60% savings in development costs and some of the, it seems like internal reviews of systems.
Yeah, my auditing experience started, I kind of wanted to work on the inside rather than the outside because our quality auditors were absolutely killing us. I was a programmer at the time. They called us programmers and then not software developers. And they needed help in auditing. And I said, well, I'll take the course and I'll audit with you guys. And when I got inside and was working with them, I could help them understand what the software engineers were going through. Because what happened was the business controls were setting our processes and procedures. So they didn't really understand what types of level of work they were causing us to have to perform, because they were looking at more from an accounting standpoint. We have to have all these rules and regulations. And we do need rules and regulations. They were just applying them improperly. And as far as the savings, it was actually a huge consolidation. When I enjoyed the quality work, and we had certifications. We had over 200 certifications in IBM. What they had done was they had gone across and certified each location separately. So we had 30 some odd auditing firms that were certifying us, and we had over 200 certificates. So what I did, and it took us about 5 years, we started to consolidate them. We took North America and made North America a single certificate. Then we took Europe and made them a single certificate, South America, Asia, and so on. Japan was not included in the Asian. They had their own certificate. For all of Japan, instead of all of our locations in Japan, we had one Japanese certification. And when all was said and done, I was able to go to ANAB, who is the American National Accreditation Body, and convince them to allow such consolidations with, I'm going to call it a virtual audit, of what we would do in occasions where we had remote locations. Instead of spending all the money to send auditors out there, we would do it via technology. We didn't have FaceTime at that time, but we were using technology where we could see their documents, and we'd be on the phone, they'd be showing us their documents. And it saved a lot of money. It saved them a lot of money. We got a very nice award for that.
Thank you. Yes, Jack.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that you served on the grand jury, which gave you some
I
additional
am currently
information.
serving on the grand jury.
Perhaps you could tell us, what exposure experience have you had with any of the cities, the county, special districts, governmental things that they just in part you were looking at, but direct exposure?
Direct exposure, well, none that I could talk about.
Okay. Well, I mean, many of us here tonight have been on planning commissions or city councils or boards or employees of different, so we kind of know how, at least within the Little Marin County, how things work and how they work, the 11 cities in the county.
I have
any insight
never
to that
served on any boards. I worked all my life. I've already been in the county for about 9 years now. My son has lived here for over 20 years, so I knew when he left to go to school in San Francisco, I knew he was never coming back. So you don't go to San Francisco and leave. So he's lived here since 1994 and convinced me to come live here with, not with him, but in the same county as he is.
Thank you.
Okay, Lou?
So, as I understand the workings of the grand jury, you have 17, 19 members, okay? And there is no second opinion. You get consensus on each of your reports, and there's only a single report that's issued. And further, the grand jury reports don't have a force of law. They are advisory, they are reporting, but there's no force of law. So with those two issues, can you tell me how you feel about that, where it's kind of a consensus-built, non-individual contributor, at least notice kind of issue, and then again, not directly having a certain impact on what you're doing?
That depends. We feel as if some of the reports that have come out in the past could have been better and maybe didn't have much impact. We certainly feel like the ones we're working on now are going to have a great deal of impact. We do everything by consensus, which means that you have to get along with everyone. I mean, there's no one that rises above it all and becomes the boss or the key person. So collaboration is extremely important, and we have achieved that. I am actually the chair of the editorial committee, which has always been a very difficult one to work on because you're reviewing and commenting other people's work. And we have it working as smoothly as they've ever seen it. Because when I say that, ever seen it, because we have some jurors that have been on before. You can stay on for 2 years, or you can always reapply. So your individual contribution, you have to understand, is your goal is to work as a group and not be that conscious of your own contribution as much as your collaborative and combined contributions. As far as, I forgot the other half of your question.
There are no dissenting opinions. I mean, you get, again, consensus.
We get consensus, and you can dissent, you know. We have to get a quorum, and we have to have majority. But, you know, there are times where you can dissent. Not having the power of the law, we have a little bit. We can, you know, subpoena people. The agencies that we have dealt with so far, I have found to be extraordinarily cooperative. And that's very satisfying, that we don't have people that are unpleasant or uncooperative. They come in, they talk to us with the interviews. And it would be nice if we had the power of the law, but we don't. So we can give our recommendations and try to do them as strongly as possible so that they do have an effect, and they do get published. So if the public becomes aware of some of the situations that we're investigating, maybe we can get some local or community support and actions coming to meetings like this.
Okay, thank you. Any more? Okay, thank you very much,
Well,
Wanda.
thank you.
Okay, and we'll move right along. Mr. Chris Skelton. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Again, the same procedure with you. If you would please describe what you believe to be the essential role of LAFCO.
Certainly, and I apologize in advance. I feel as though I'm coming down with the cold, so I feel a little lethargic tonight. But the prior speaker, Wanda, did a great job of reflecting what was articulated on the LAFCO's website. In my eyes, it boils down to efficiency of government, as well as cost, and trying to help manage that. That's, in my eyes, sort of the core here. Urban sprawl, yeah, I think that goes along with the efficiency aspect of it, and I think that's the core purpose of LAFCO.
Okay, thank you. And Chris, please explain and or elaborate on your interest in serving as the alternate regular public member on LAFCO and how it relates to your background and experiences.
Certainly. So originally my interest is more in general community service. I previously served as a planning commissioner in Mill Valley, and throughout my entire life I've always actively participated in community service. More often it's been on an individual basis, reading to the elderly, walking dogs at an animal shelter. And a number of years ago, I wanted to broaden my horizon and try to reach a broader audience. So that's when I began serving as planning commissioner. I really enjoyed that experience. Unfortunately, my time was cut short because I moved outside of the city limits. And part of Mill Valley's requirements are that you be a member of the city limits for the planning commission. So when I no longer lived in Mill Valley, moved over to Fairfax, I decided to start participating in youth baseball. And so I started coaching for West Marin Little League. It's been a really rewarding experience. Now in my second year doing that. And it's been an opportunity for me to reach a different demographic, a little bit closer to home. I like doing things that connect me to the local community. And so I've interacted with LAFCO on a number of occasions, which I'll elaborate in a minute. But as part of that, Keen shot me an email and said, "Hey, just so you know, there's going to be an application for an opening for the alternate public member." And I thought this would be a terrific experience to sort of leapfrog from my commission experience where I was truly serving a pretty local, unique area and maybe touch a broader audience in terms of all of Marin County. Elaborating on my interest, I'm a land use and real estate attorney here in Marin County, and I started as an attorney working at county council, actually partially with David Zaltzman, council to Marin LAFCO. I worked with the Strawberry Rec District there, where I got sort of my first taste of LAFCO, and since then I've had the pleasure of I transitioned to the private sector. My former firm, Reg Freitas, we represented a number of special districts here in Marin County, and I had an opportunity to work with them. One particularly rewarding experience was lobbying the state legislature on behalf of one of the special districts to effectuate a legislative change. And part of that work necessitated communications through LAFCO in making sure that the scope of the authority for the special district was blessed by LAFCO, and that it sort of it fit within the efficiency and the cost aspects of LAFCO's oversight. I'm happy to say that it did pass. Got to see how sausage was made, and that since that experience, geez, I guess 3 or 4 years ago now, I've also had the unique opportunity of representing property owners that have applied for change in service areas or sanitation facilities, and so I've seen it from a number of different vantage points, all that LAFCO can accomplish.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Now the next one. If you would please describe what you believe to be the key opportunities and challenges for Marin LAFCO.
Opportunities is really difficult. I know that you guys have put together a really robust work plan, and it evolves year to year. I can't, improve upon the opportunities that you've already outlined here tonight without first really experiencing it. As an alternate, I hope that that's something that I can grow and add on to in the future. Challenges, I think the number one challenge is politics. There are, Marin is comprised of essentially a number of townships. They're small village communities, and planning and regulation is something that is almost always seen as a local issue. And it's really, really difficult for people in any community to relinquish control of a local issue and subject themselves to maybe a broader audience or a greater good. So I think the biggest challenge is probably the politics of convincing people or directing people that this is in everyone's best interest and that this will serve the greatest good for the broadest audience.
Okay, thank you. So are there any follow-up questions? Jack?
I was curious, what was the issue you were speaking of a few minutes ago about pursuing with the legislature on behalf of one of your clients?
Yeah. Yeah, it was for the Belmarine Keys Community Service District. And there was a question about whether or not they were allowed to enforce local CCNRs. And it was an interesting issue. There was a little bit of ambiguity in the existing government code, and we cleaned it up and clarified it.
What was the outcome then? They were?
Yes, the legislature decided that they were allowed to, so long as they went through certain procedures, and a number of them were actually fiscally driven to make sure that there were checks and balances and oversight to.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more.
Okay. Sure.
As you, this says legal practice exclusively land use and real estate matters. Do you think occasionally your practice would pose some conflicts with issues that people want to sue or something else?
Of course. I've certainly thought about that, and that was an issue that I wrestled with when I was a member on the Mill Valley Planning Commission. Thankfully, I think I was only conflicted of one issue in over 2 years in Mill Valley. I've been practicing for a number of years and have only appeared on behalf of an applicant once at LAFCO. LAFCO, actually, many people don't know about LAFCO. It's sort of the wizard behind the curtain, so to speak. And so,
not everyone would say wizard, but that's kind of you. Keen would say that.
Certainly. And so. LAFCO issues, in my experience, are very few and far between. I don't anticipate really any conflicts, but certainly understand that on occasion one may arise. And frankly, that's why boards and commissions are comprised of more than 1, 3, people. They're often 5, 7, 9, so on and so forth.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so Chris, can you just, did you serve a full term on the Planning Commission in Mill Valley? And then the second item is just if you could elaborate on your experience with LAFCO on the annexation issue.
Yeah, no, unfortunately I didn't finish out the 3-year term. We were fortunate to be renting in Mill Valley at the time, and the landlord put the house on the market, made a run for it, and it just didn't quite work out. But we're thankful to own a home in Fairfax now. The annexation issue for the sanitation district. It was actually more precautionary and paperwork on my end. It was a very logical issue where a property owner was part of the sanitation district, and it required that they pump uphill through, I think, 4 or 5 different easements across a number of properties, and the house was going through a major remodel. The other adjacent sanitation district had capacity, and it is now gravity fed, so it flows downhill. like I said, not really controversial and just a logical annexation. Not my role was more in ushering it through the process and dotting the i's, crossing the t's for the paperwork. Certainly.
Is this the one about Los Ranchitos?
Yes, sir.
I thought I remembered that.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
And after Chris, Mr. Stephen Voss.
Yes.
Good evening.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, same order. Would you please describe what you believe to be the essential role of LAFCO?
Well, my first experience with LAFCO was about 10 years ago, but it's really hard to understand what LAFCO does unless you've read extensively about the different things that you do. I understand the planning and administrative and oversight that you have, but when I looked at the list of districts and public units that you have responsibility over, it's absolutely mind-boggling. That can't imagine how you can be the police, flood, fire, sewers, water, the list, airport, bridges. I mean, the list is extensive, and Marin County has all of those. So I assume you're not responsible for the Richmond Bridge. And the issues that are facing are a lot of small issues which are impacted greatly on all of the small little entities, towns, and villages that exist within the county. And how you perform your jobs, as LAFCO performs a job with oversight and planning. It's, I don't know how you do that. Coming from a business background, not government, it seems incredibly big.
Okay, and would you please explain and/or elaborate on your interest in serving as the alternate regular public member on Marin LAFCO and how it relates to your background and experiences?
By the way,
Give it a minute, yeah.
I have been asked involved. I have a second home in Delmar, and they have this issue with the train. And they solve this issue with the train because you can get directional whistles that are just planted at the intersections. So the train doesn't have to blow the whistle a mile away. And it's controlled electronically because the purpose for the train whistle is to warn people at the intersection. So it's a muffled, effective, approved by the government. And I've never read in the paper if anybody's even looked at that, but it's available and
Please
it has been
submit
done.
that recommendation, Smart, please.
Anyway, I come from a business background, and I have not been involved. I've tried to be involved with the county sometimes. I live in District 4, the one that extends from Marin City out to West Marin, and I'm in the mountain. So we're neglected, we're forgotten. And we deal with sewer issues, so I'm somewhat familiar with that, and I have had some words about the LAFCO information and approval of what they were trying to do on the mountain. But one of the good things I would bring is, one, no one knows me. I don't have a family that's lived here for 2,000 years that own farmland or have been running the roads to do something. So I bring no political baggage or anything of that sort to the board. But my background is business, and I've worked for two exceptionally fine companies, the last one 20 years, that was considered the most successful financial institution in the United States for at least 15 years. I managed a loan department, I ran single family, I did commercial lending. I also was responsible for warehouses and for human resources when I originally joined that company. So I have probably, when I was with, it was World Savings, Golden West Financial, have probably $700 to $800 million in loans that are in place in Marin County. So I'm familiar with all of the apartment houses that exist here, any of the housing developments that exist here, and understand the real estate side
and the financial side of what Marin is all about. So I bring some of those experiences to the table, and I'm retired, so I have time.
Great, thank you. Next one. Could you please describe what you believe to be the key opportunities and challenges for Marin LAFCO?
Well, I'm not too clear on when Marin LAFCO gets involved with things, unless, from what I've read, if different agencies want to merge or urban sprawl, whatever the definition in Marin. So I really can't answer that with a lot of understanding and knowledge. But I do know that all these incredible small communities which have their own sewer districts and all of those little entities, it's so incredibly inefficient, except for allowing local people to be involved or to be president or to run for election of something. But I think that has to change, and that's an issue that LAFCO would obviously be involved with.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up questions? Anybody? Great.
So, Stephen, you mentioned here you have some contract negotiation experience. Perhaps you could...
Well, I've got contract negotiation experience. I've got labor relations experience. I negotiated union contracts when I was with Xerox. I have pension plan and retirement experience in running 2 different pension plans. I had a stockbroker experience when I was a stockbroker for a few years. I've got just a very broad business background in all aspects of human resources and general business, especially in the savings and loan banking business.
Jack?
Yeah, you may have spoken of this and I missed it. And the same question I posed to one of the other applicants. Could you tell us what experience, exposure you've had dealing with local government entities? Cities, counties, planning commissions?
Well, I was on the advisory board to Alta Bates Hospital when I lived over in the East Bay. I just got off the board of directors for Delta Dental, which is the largest nonprofit dental insurance company in the United States. I was on the finance committee, the audit committee, and the compensation committee while I was on the board.
But these are private, for-profit organizations.
No, Delta Dental is a nonprofit. Okay. That's a nonprofit.
I'm thinking government.
I have not had.
I'm not trying to pick on the Delta or anybody else, but they're different creatures.
Yeah, have not been involved with any government entity.
Okay, that's fine.
Except I'm on the Marin County. I'm an alternate on the Marin County Personnel Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Okay, then, Keen, I will turn it over to you to review our voting process.
Perfect. So now that we've done with the interviews, we are going to, or Rachel is going to pass out a ballot for all 6 of our voting city, county, and district members. That ballot has each of the 4 candidates' name on it. We ask you to identify by way of preference, 1 through 4, each candidate. And once we collect all of the ballots, there's going to be an immediate threshold that we will assess, and that is, does any single one candidate have a majority, or in this case, 4 or more first place votes? So if there is, well then that person gets the appointment. If no one candidate gets a majority of first place votes, and then Rachel will go ahead and count up total points for each candidate. So a first place preference is worth 10 points, a second place preference is worth 8 points, a third is worth 6 points, and a fourth is worth 4 points. And then whoever has the most points by way of the system will then get the appointment process. Now, we will keep the ballots with us. They're open to the public to inspect once we're done. And so I think we can go ahead and cast away, and then I'll double check so we know the numbers are right.
Okay, so we'll take a minute to do that.
Since I can't vote, I'm not voting.
So now Rachel is going to come by and collect away. And then please make sure you sign the bottom of your ballot.
Okay, while Rachel is collecting, I want to thank all 4 candidates. I mean, we've had, this is one thing that I always think is special about Marin. We get the most amazing volunteers, just selfless people who are so well qualified. And I mean, every one of you here has given of your time in things apart from what you get a paycheck for. And it's really appreciated. I know, Sharon, I congratulate you on your participation in the village. Larkspur and Puerto Madera partnered with the village, and we just started the village on November 1st. And our Age Friendly, which was under the guidance of Tricia Smith, who you know. And then we've got the Little League and your coaching, which takes so much time and dedication. And you just sort of wonder how you all can do it. And Wanda with the grand jury, I mean, that is really time consuming. That I know as being on the council, we get every one of your reports. And so, you know, we see all the work and dedication that goes into that. And Stephen, all the different boards, they're really the highest, on the highest echelon that you've served. And so we are really fortunate that all 4 of you have volunteered for this. And any one of you I know would make a perfect place up here to serve. One thing I would suggest, and it came as an afterthought, but whoever does get seated, I personally, from personal experience, recommend that even as an alternate, you attend the meetings, because otherwise, if you are called upon to fill in for the seated person, you're just not going to know what's going on. So I really, really would recommend that. And I would recommend to the other 3 to please continue to volunteer in any way that interests you, because we really value, and it makes value your time and your efforts, and it really makes a difference. And it's what makes Marin so special. And we are just very grateful. Well, I can tell that this didn't come out
They were doing it
easy.
I just want to make a comment. I think for your comments that praising all of our applicants for their volunteer service. I also wanted to just mention that this is something we say in our commission interviews, that if you do not happen to be the one selected, please reapply. It took me 3 tries to get appointed to a commission in the city of Mill Valley. So often there are such a wealth of qualified applicants that it's difficult to just choose the one. And also I think this group, as we kind of mentioned when we were talking about Chris's contribution, it's a unique group. This is it's a wonky little group, and it's a unique group of people who get into some sort of obscure details of government. And if this is your thing, please stay involved and come to meetings, watch them on YouTube, and there will be other opportunities in the future for those who are interested, who really do see a way to contribute in this way. So want to encourage the other three to please try again.
Thank you, Sashi. And I know that we can't even say it enough, that really we are very, very blessed to have such qualified applicants. And I remember in our town, there were times when we couldn't get anybody to apply for anything. And so anyway, it is much appreciated. When the ballots are all counted, then we are going to move along to our Central Marin wastewater study. And
while we do a little, as Rachel finishes up the tally, just because we have a little extra time, I did want to introduce, we have a brand new general manager in the audience. Heather Abrams is the new general manager for Tampa's Community Services District, and it's her first LAFCO meeting, so 2 for 2 for her.
welcome.
Thank you.
And congratulations, too.
Well, thank you.
Okay, do we need to take a break while you tally, or are you almost?
I think we're a couple minutes away.
Oh.
And to the credits of the candidates, this has been an instant runoff. There was no majority winner here. So we just wanted to double check the numbers, so we ran them twice.
Good, thank you. I know you would think that this would be an easy process, but it's not.
Be careful with the officials, because when I lost the last election, I lost by 1 vote.
Oh, no.
Wow. Really?
One vote. So you figured it out, Lou?
Okay, if anybody needs to take a 1-minute break.
I can pop it back. I can't figure out how to set the time. It's not that difficult. I can pop it back. Well, the biggest risk is that you won't be able to get that done.
That's all right, as my wife said, wife, we got some clocks around here.
At home, I have a.
Yeah, well, as long as you don't mind, the long cord reminds you.
That's my operating.
Okay, everybody.
Before we technically announce the winner, just because your staff decided to publish this as a notice public hearing, can you just formally open the hearing in case anyone wants to make an observation, and then just close the public hearing? Because again, staff thought it was a good idea to voluntarily notice as a public hearing. Didn't need to do it, my bad, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, this was a public hearing.
Yes.
And now?
If there's anyone in the audience who desperately wanted to make an observation before we complete the proceedings.
Yeah. Are there any other comments from the audience? Seeing none, we will close it to public comment. And I would like to congratulate our new alternate member, Chris Skelton. Congratulations. Chris, on behalf of everybody, I welcome you, and just come knowing that you have a very hard act to follow, and to also tell our other 3 candidates, this was really close, and I'm talking about all of you. So, as Sasha mentioned, please be on the lookout, reapply, and just please stay active in our community. And at the next meeting in May, June. June 8th, our next meeting, that will be when you will officially take office. Okay? Congratulations. And these, the results will be available for the...
They're available right now. If anyone wants to look at them, Rachel or I, since Rachel has the next item, we'll go outside and you can look at them to your heart's content, and we'll have them at the office at any time over the next 4 years. We'll keep them on file.
Okay? Thank you. All right, folks, we still not even, I don't think, the halfway mark. Our next item on the agenda is the Central Marin Wastewater Study, and we're going to have a presentation of the draft report. And this is being presented for discussion. With the recommendation, the Commission authorized staff to proceed with a formal 45-day review period in anticipation of returning in June for the final actions. So, Rachel?
Thank you, Carla. You did my opening statement pretty well, so I can just move right on.
I'm sorry.
No, that's great. So, for quick context, this study has been prepared entirely by staff over the last year plus, and is in part the Commission's still relatively new mandate under state law to independently evaluate the accessibility, availability, and performance of municipal services within our services every 5 years and in relation to LAFCO's prescribed growth management duties. Now, the latter of which involves state legislatures' direction to all LAFCOs to independently weigh in on certain factors, and highlighted by the Commission to take their own population projections, own infrastructure needs, and opportunities and merits for government restructuring. This evening, I would like to take 10 minutes or so and walk through the draft report and cover the basics along highlighting key themes as well as recommendations that call on some type of action. Now, whether it involves one or more of the affected agencies or the Commission itself. This begins by noting the study ultimately takes in 60 square miles of this study service area in Central Marin and captures 7 local public agencies that directly, or in the case of CMSA, indirectly fall under your oversight and can be shown on the screen behind me. The study is also purposely formatted to uniformly transition from qualitative discussions on community development to more quantitative assessments on population counts, services, and finances for all of these 7 affected agencies. Staff would like to acknowledge that taking aim at uniformity does create some challenges given all of the agencies have their own unique circumstances and characteristics that can somewhat get lost in an apple-to-apple approach. That said, and for the purposes of a regional MSR, we believe this is the best tactic to be able, the easiest way to be able to update for future studies. Now, jumping along, all of the key information generated from the referenced approach, and again relative to Marin LAFCO's prescribed growth management interests, is captured in the executive summary on page 26. And it is in this part of the report that we not only take aim at drafting determinations to address all of the mandatory factors required by the legislature, but also offer up what we see as central themes as well as showcase the recommended actions. Now, the written determinations for the Commission to consider when evaluating an agency are outlined as follows, which is the growth in population projections, location and characteristics of disadvantaged unincorporated communities, capacity of public facilities and infrastructure needs and deficiencies, the agency's financial ability and to provide services, the status opportunities for shared facilities and resources, local accountability and government restructure options. And the next one, this was added for this particular study, the relationship between services and land use policies, as well as planning for climate change. Moving on to the general conclusions, these underline the most significant central themes in the report, and some worth mentioning are number 2, 7 of the affected agencies are projected to be at 89% of their current planned estimated build-out at the end of the study period. And this ratio is expected to increase to 94% over the succeeding next 10-year period. This also includes 6,500 new residents within that same period. Number 3, the affected agencies' cost to maintain wastewater infrastructure will continue to exceed associated revenues, with combined increases in operating expenses outpacing operating revenues. Given community preferences towards limited growth, there may be also limiting opportunities going forward to spread out the costs among a greater pool of ratepayers. Number 7, 8, and a little bit of 12, wastewater demands are de-intensifying during normal conditions and intensifying during peak day conditions. The reduction in wastewater during dry conditions most likely were attributed to conservation efforts and because of the drought. Now, increases in peak day conditions were most likely attributed to brief and intense storm-like events, and this impacted inflow infiltration, and it can be an indication that more resiliency planning among the agencies is needed to combat climate change and address that there's more intense weather events that are impacting the infrastructure. Collection and treatment capacities are sufficient to accommodate growth over now and the next 10 years. This is number 9 and 10. Despite relative build-out estimates, collection and treatments are sufficient to accommodate demands, and more attention to CMSA during dry weather seasons is needed as they are reaching their capacities in design and permit limits. So for the recommendations or suggested actions to be taken either by the commission or the agency, these are the following ones that staff would like to point out. Number 2, CMSA should develop a plan to allocate treatment capacities among its member agencies and enhance regional growth management. This would help agencies as well as land use authorities' ability to forecast and accommodate new development opportunities or accommodate new development within their boundaries. Number 7, the commission should consider proceeding with reorganizations to dissolve Murray Park Sewer Maintenance District and San Quentin Village Sewer Maintenance District. This would eliminate the need for 2 independent special districts governed by the county and with Ross Valley Sanitary District as the preferred service provider. Number 8, the commission should consider further analysis to fully evaluate the merits and demerits of reorganizations of consolidating public wastewater agencies within the region of Central Marin. This responds to LAFCO's directive towards regionalization to produce greater accountability and efficiency within the area. Number 9, affected agencies should look to identify all septic systems within their respective area. For this, there's an increasingly health and safety risk that's posed in urban areas with the failing of septic systems, and agencies should determine any future risks that may align with resiliency planning. Lastly, number 10, land use authorities should match affected wastewater service providers with potential development opportunities as means to plan growth with service. So the next steps would be for this draft report is for the commission to proceed with a phase of study, is to proceed with this study and initiate a formal 45-day public review period that would be returned in June with a final document and accompanying resolutions for formal consideration. And this concludes my presentation. I'm more than welcome to receive comments or answer any questions as Vice Chair permits.
Thank you, Rachel. First of all, are there any questions from our audience?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, this is questions or public comment?
No, this is questions to the
questions for
report.
her.
This is a public hearing, so at your discretion, you can open up the hearing.
But it's to this,
Okay.
Okay,
it's to this topic.
I've got questions.
Okay. If you would mind going back to the podium, please.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. And state your name again, please.
It's Jeff Jacob. And my first question would be about climate change. That's number 12 on the report. And what I read there is there's a plan to mitigate climate change, not to try and prevent it coming from Marin County. Marin County imports 60% of its workers every day from outside the county, if not outside the country. This is not a path to sustainability. So that's my question about climate change and a little statement too there. Another one is 6.2. It said Marin County used to have disadvantaged areas that would be treated differently, and Nicasia was the last one. I live on the acreage off of Sausalito, and many people there are completely without money. Most of them were born in Marin County. We take care of the homeless. We take care of people that are rehabbing from drugs. We take care of people that are getting out of our overburdened and overcrowded prison system. 6.4, it says that the amount of money that's being spent on wastewater is $710 per person, and 3.1, it says it's a $9,000 buy-in. The last porta potty for the Anchorage off of Sausalito, which was in Dunphy Park, has been taken away. There is no public toilet. There's no way to spend $5 or $10 or $100 or $100,000 to take care of this issue. There are a few pump out stations for a few people. While Sausalito was debating how they were going to ban the Anchorage, they all talked about composting and that they were very much in favor of this. I don't know how it could work for the 100 or so people who are living out there on the Anchorage, but I'm always looking for something positive. And I'm hoping that this can be done on whatever small level or even in our minds first. The average person in Marin, according to this report, uses 111 gallons a day of water. And the drought is over, thank God. To think that somebody who would live offshore would be carrying 111 gallons is ridiculous. We can live off of far, far less, and I think most people in Marin County probably could too.
Okay,
yeah.
Is that it? Okay, thank you.
Are
there any of those comments, either Rachel or Keen, that you would be able to respond to?
Well, I guess we'll just start with the first thing that I said, which was climate change, that there's a plan to mitigate the climate change that we are producing every day, every hour, and every minute. Why is there not a plan to prevent climate change from one of the worst offenders in the world, and that is Marin County, California?
Okay, so in that essence, there are some agencies such as Los Colinas Valley Sanitary District that's looking at recycling water, non-potable water. I believe in the report we said for one of the recommendations that the agency should look to allocate and find ways to share resources, and one of those ways could be looking at more efforts to find recycled water opportunities. For overall though, why I feel like climate change is happening right now. There's not too much that can take place for these agencies to mitigate, and they should be looking to respond to their impacts since they're currently happening through the drought and the El Nino, which happened a year later. But we're seeing all these intense weather events that they should be taking efforts to plan for the future. And I believe it would be a benefit for them to look to looking at how to adapt infrastructure and better use their resources to plan for any flooding or failing of septic systems.
I'll just add, admittedly, I'm not too familiar with the world of soft soil anchor out, so I acknowledge my blind spot, but our study area is just specifically Central Marin. But what I suggest, because I'm interested in if staff talks to Jeff offline, because as we do these studies and we inch our way south, we may want to talk to him about the world of anchor outs, as I heard him. But in this study, they just fall outside of this geographic area that we had created.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Rachel. Are there any other questions? Yes, Chris.
I'll certainly be more familiar with this report come June. Where's the data coming from for the projected growth estimates?
So these were LAFCO's own projections. We used census data from Marin maps to calculate the growth rate within, I believe it was 2009 or 2010's growth rate, and we applied that for later years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and seeing no further questions from our audience, we'll close it for public and come back here.
For questions now or deliberations?
Questions,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Keen, thank you for spending a bunch of time with me today on this and answering a bunch of my questions, but I have still more. And thank you, Rachel. I want to really commend your putting together 7 MSRs essentially in one, which is a more efficient way of us moving our way through our schedule, so thank you for that. Actually Chris asked somewhat close to one of the questions I was going to ask, which is we're doing hold on. This happens when we have MCE board meetings, so you just wait for the train to okay, you're doing growth projections based on the previous 5 years and projecting that forward, but in the previous 5 years we did have a drought, so do you have any thoughts on whether or not that would skew the numbers?
So for the most part, we generally focus on averages, and I believe those projections could capture that. But again, answering, I guess the theme is there's a lot of variances now within these next 10 years, and capturing that drought, I believe, is still valuable, considering that there is an unknown of what will take place in California due to climate change among these agencies. So capturing it, I think, gives a good perspective because we only have a 5-year window, but within 10 years, we can't say we don't know what will happen, and capturing that drought, and we have a period of a little storm event in 2014 is a good sample for the next 10 years.
Okay, I'm not totally familiar with how it works in this region as it relates to what I'm used to with Mill Valley, but I know that we have collection at the city and town level, and then then we have what the city, at the city and town level directed into SASM, and we have SASM collection. So does your review also take into account the collection at the city and town level? Because the I&I at the city and, might be coming from the city and town level and affecting that, as opposed to at the agency level.
So we looked at the collection systems and we understand that there can be impacts. We didn't look at, we looked at San Rafael Sanitation District. We didn't look at City of Larkspur, but we understand that I&I impacts are, we looked at them uniformly throughout all the agencies. So those impacts will be seen in weekday conditions, but we didn't isolate where they're coming from, just as the agencies don't necessarily know where they're coming from.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, and you're defining build out as based on the housing element in the current year?
Correct.
Okay, so reaching the build out as of like right now, as of this year?
Correct, at 89%.
Okay.
Well, in 2014.
Okay. And then I did want to add that I know you don't have OPEB data for all the years, but I think it would be nice, since this is to be a document that would hopefully live on and get updated, it would be great to throw in a space for OPEBs with the pension, so that I know you only have a year's worth of data at this time, but then that way for the next round of updates, there would be room to put that in. And then we were just handed this this communication from Ross Kelly, but I just wanted to add one thing that I just noticed. Again, I didn't have time to read it thoroughly since we just handed it, but they noted latent powers that the district has, and they were suggesting that might be, we might want to add something about the latent powers that each of the agencies has. I thought that was an interesting suggestion. I just wanted to put that out there. I don't know if other people agree about that, but that was something that stood out to me from that letter.
Thank you. Okay, any other? Yes, Steve.
Again, Rachel, great effort on this. Always interesting even to read the history of each area, et cetera. I noticed one of your recommendations related to the governance issue on San Rafael Sanitary District. If you could elaborate a little bit on that. It looks like you're so right now, that agency, well, maybe you could even elaborate, like how is the board currently set up? And maybe just a better idea of the boundaries, and then what do you propose?
So for the San Rafael board, I believe they have 2 county board of supervisors on the board, and I believe there's no representation from county board of supervisor that serves District 1, which is in the area that serves San Rafael.
Which would be me.
So
it's the Damon Conley determination, actually.
We think it would.
As I need some additional work.
We don't want to pile the work on you, but we believe that.
So actually, I just found the page. It looks like, yeah. So right now it's the mayor, a city council member, and a supervisor. Who happens to be District 2, Katie Rice, and she represents part of San Rafael. So it looks like probably 2 city, 1 county is what the breakdown is. So it's an interesting concept, yeah, because I represent most of San Rafael, but not all. So how does that
Let me just
play?
jump in. So, based on
result of the enabling act,
just based on the geographic area, it just so happens Supervisor District 1 captures way more of San Rafael Sanitation District than any other supervisorial district. And so, in looking at the governance structure, staff observed that in order to further marry customer to representative, it would make more sense for Supervisor District 1, who covers that area more so than anyone else, to be the appointed member of that governing board.
But let me here's a curveball.
I'm ready.
So Galenas Valley Sanitation District is obviously separate. Okay, so I actually live in Galenas Valley Sanitary District. So I'm the District 1 supervisor, but technically am not really within the limits of Santa Fe Sanitary District. So
In that example, though, you still get to vote for Craig and the other 4 Las Galenas Valley Santa District Board members. If I am a 9 out of 10 Santa Fe residents who are in Santa Fe Sanitation District,
I represent.
You're representing, but yet another supervisor who they don't get to vote for is representing their interests with respect to setting rates and other things with respect to this particular sanitary district. So it just LAFCO's effort to highlight what we think could be a governance improvement.
Okay, it's worth considering.
And that would require a change to the Enabling Act?
It would, no, actually, this is just a discretionary act from Santa Fe Sanitation. They choose who they want to be their 1 county member. As we understood, it's just been historical practice that it's been District Number 2 representative. And we said, why? And this is practice. And then we put pen to paper after that response.
So we could do it by flow too, and we're flowing.
Okay, any other questions to Rachel? Right.
So I talked offline to Rachel a little bit, so great report, there's a few corrections, and there's some current things too, so I think encourage each of the districts to provide their own comments in regards to it that might be kind of outside the scope of this, but like we received from Ross Valley tonight. So the septic systems, latent powers is a good example of things that could maybe members of each district might not be aware of these things that their district could do for them. For instance, we have a new JPA, which is also in Marin City, that should be included. One of the things you mentioned that watersheds will be included. This might be the first MSR with watersheds being kind of couched that way, so thank you for doing that. And then from our Western Marin experience, it's really interesting to see kind of our action items. What items are staff kind of seeing that each of these districts can kind of work on to improve, and I know a lot of times very unwillingly, but it's good to have that within the document, that kind of outside looking in how we can try to improve things. So perhaps Rachel, you could kind of indicate to us how that kind of flows through the document where we can see those proposed action items or improvements in each of the districts.
So if you go to, generally for the recommendations, this would be action items that either the commission or the affected agency should take action on. And they are listed on here, and I don't have, I believe they are on page I have page 27 of the study. And this document should be a living document, and we would like all these recommendations in this study is for the commission to consider, and if not, in terms of the consolidation, if not, would like to go forth with this now, at least revisit this in the next 5 years when this particular MSR would come up again. And then that's where action could be taken. And that's where we would follow up with the agencies to see, okay, we suggested this in 2017, so why has this not occurred? And, you know, let's start looking to take action.
So for instance, like in our district, mentioned was the Northgate plan early on with the city of Santa Fe reviewing our district area. Obviously with Northgate, there'll be probably some very soon changes, perhaps increase in density, more housing units, much needed housing units in Marin County. It will affect the agency in terms of capacity and serving those new future residents in Marin County. So, you know, looking forward, it would be nice. I think there's, as Peter mentioned, kind of a blind spot. There may be a little bit of the blind spots as things are kind of currently happening, but with understanding that you can't really forecast something that might not necessarily happen, but at this point it might be reasonably probable that those things will happen.
And it will serve as a good comparative baseline to compare what has happened since, you know, to compare the two reports when the next report comes out.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Rachel, you have, I think, line 7, it considers some reorganizations, essentially consolidating two dependent districts into an independent district. And I'm just wondering how that actually works under the Cortese-Knox rules. And then secondly, was there substantial differences there between what the fees are now, the sewer fees are now, and what they would be if they were consolidated into another district? And I'm just wondering if you looked at both of those things.
So I can't say I or staff has delved too deeply into looking and assessing all the options for restructuring, but we would like, if the commission wishes and finds appropriate, that they allocate resources for staff to look into this. So I can't say or answer tonight on, you know, what that would be, but we would like to find an equitable reorganization of those two districts.
And Keen, would you like to comment on how I don't know that I'm aware we've done a dependent district and consolidated with an independent?
Yeah, so
how that would work?
You certainly have the ability now with some legislative cleanup over the last 5 years to consolidate districts of different principal acts. So in this particular case, essentially the path that we see most efficient, and there's a couple different paths, okay, but in terms of Murray Park and San Quentin, is that you essentially consolidate them into Ross Valley Sanitary District. Now, in terms of the rate discrepancies, you can, in partnership with Ross Valley, now this is presuming that Ross Valley is a partner on this, and I know we have their general manager, Greg Norby, in attendance, but you can certainly work and establish zones that create different rates for those areas. So there's an option there. It's somewhat unique that you have these sewer maintenance districts to begin with. I had never actually heard of them before I came to Marin. We looked into them. They're effective, but they're somewhat antiquated from a different time and era. I don't think this commission would ever approve a sewer maintenance district just based on its operating structure. But the idea here is you have two districts that the county operates. Initial feedback from the county is they are okay with giving up these districts so long as you mentioned, the protections are there for their ratepayers. And I think that's something we could probably work out with Ross Valley.
Jack.
Having a little passing acquaintance with both districts from my past employment, you kind of understate the county's position. I think the county would be thrilled to unload either one of these. The one that is, you know, Murray Park, obviously, you know, Ross Valley, it's contiguous to Larkspur. I mean, that's kind of, I think, in terms of where it's situated and politically, it should be a slam dunk. I guess it's been explored in the past, as I recall. And I don't know, there may have been some feelings there about local governance that I'm not totally sure. But the San Quentin one is self-evident. It's geographically, it's isolated out there on the other side of the prison. And my past recollection is the Ross Valley wasn't thrilled, you know, and much less Larkspur, I guess, who has taken inroads to a certain point, I think on one side of the prison. But I think it's worth pursuing. I think the county would be very happy, I think, then, years ago, when I had some minor involvement in or today. But there was some local resistance, I think. I'm not sure. I think we had, you mentioned the manager of Ross Valley. I think we might have a board member also here from Ross Valley that's kind of monitoring the comments, so see where it goes.
Okay. Any more comments? Okay, and any more comments from our audience? Okay, then we'll close it, bring it back. What Rachel is asking this evening is for us to take an action, and we can do that. Receive and discuss the draft report and provide feedback as needed, and authorize staff to proceed with the next phase of the study and initiate a formal 45-day review period and comment period, and then bring this back in June. Or other alternative is simply to continue the item and request additional information from staff as needed.
I have a quick question, and I'm sorry to bring it up now.
We're going to have to open, we'll open.
It's a bit of a point of order thing, kind of, sort of. How will the public be aware to comment? Are you going to advertise somewhere or somehow? Because I don't think a lot of people know about what's happening.
Well, sure. So our normal operating procedure is we certainly put it on our website for the 40 diehard LAFCO fans who've already signed up for our agenda notices. They get notice of the meeting. And then actually, we did this for the water study per the commission. Mostly Rachel, maybe me on occasion. We are going to start over the next week or so going to this, the affected cities and the district meetings at public comment and just say, hey, we've got the study, public comment period runs through X. You know, if you have any questions, please contact staff. So consistent with your direction with the water study, we'll do that here.
Great. Okay, does that answer your question?
Thank you very much.
Okay, then we'll close again. Yes, Dan?
Well, I was just going to move to accept the report and authorize staff to proceed with the formal 45-day review period.
Okay, thank you. A second?
So just one additional comment, and I'll second that as well. So for the audience member, some of the districts are reviewing this. Our Las Vegas district reviewed it tonight and received comments from each of the board members. So there's an additional level of public input and comment by each of the affected districts, and they should be bringing this forward within their own district agendas and vetting that out as well as the LAFCO process.
Okay, great. Thanks, Craig. Okay, Craig has seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, and we will move along to...
And actually, Chair Condon, I know we have some members of the audience who are here in particular for item number 10. It's our outside service policies.
Right.
Would it be okay if we could jump that ahead?
Okay, does anybody have any objection? We'll just switch 9 for 10. And thank you. Thanks, Mike. This is for the updated draft amendments, policies on outside service extensions. And this is an action item. And so we will move on to number 10.
Very good. And so thank you, Vice Chair. Staff is returning today, as mentioned, with some updated draft amendments to your policies as it relates to the world of outside service extensions, and in particular, the world you choose to live in as it relates to how you want to administer two different distinctions within this particular field, and I'm going to go over those in a bit. But you will recall that we spent a good hour or so at the February meeting discussing staff's initial effort at drafting up some amendments to our existing policies on this particular topic. And certainly at the end of that discussion, I think that the feedback was we're relatively close, but the commission hit pause and asked staff to do a little more outreach with the agencies before we go any further. And then if there were some revisions, that staff would bring those to you at this meeting. So that's exactly what we did. We reached out again to all of the agencies and ultimately have a handful of updated draft amendments that I want to discuss with you. And the goal here tonight is that if you feel that we've gotten closer to what you think are good, solid drafts on both topics of non-fire protection and fire protection issues, then we'd ask for you to put your finger off the pause button, allow us to proceed with the very final stage of opening this up for full public review, as well as reaching out to one group that we haven't contacted at all, which is organized labor. And that will be pertinent in just a bit as I discuss. So that said, again, you have two distinct amendment sets before you. One addresses what I'm referring to as non-fire protection, okay, and that's everything from water, wastewater, mosquito abatement, things of this nature. And then the second is fire protection services, which of course is the result of a new bill in LAFCO land, Senate Bill 239. With respect to the changes, let me just cover the low fruit first. On non-fire protection services, we have brought back the set of amendments just as you saw them in February with just one change. And that change is to no longer suggest you create a local policy to make retail or outside retail recycled water services subject to LAFCO review. I think there's certainly merits to it, but just based on your feedback and then the feedback from North Marin Water District, perhaps it was going to cause more heartburn than solve. So that's been removed. So, but everything else, all the procedural items that we had talked about in terms of setting how you want to see applications come forward, how you have staff review them, and then ultimately how you act on them, those stay the same. And I think, again, these are mostly procedural changes at this point.
What do our other Bay Area LAFCOs doing in the area of recycled water, just out of curiosity?
So, as I understand, most Bay Area LAFCOs have kind of followed what we have done, which is there's nothing explicit in our policies, but by practice, they say retail recycled water services, you don't have to come to LAFCO. None of them actually have that policy statement, but it's just inferred. And so again, staff had suggested, well, maybe we should make it explicit that they come. Got some strong feedback from some commissioners that that wasn't the best idea, so we've removed it.
So it's not atypical. It's not atypical to not have that be a policy among Bay Area LAFCOs.
Correct.
Yes, great.
So Keen, on that point, I just want to make sure the language is consistent for recycled water. So we have wholesale, non-potable, non-treated, retail. I want to make sure this is all under the gamut of recycled water. So there's no differentiation between wholesale or retail. We're still talking about recycled water being outside the purview of LAFCO. And this is consistent with North Marin's general manager's letter to us saying he thought in order to craft agreements in the recycled water world, it would be more cost effective and actually could help Marin get to agreements better by not bringing it to LAFCO. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, correct. What we've done is we just no longer talk about recycled water in these policies, and so your practice now stays the same. And so now going to the, some of the larger fruit on the tree, fire protection services. So we have made a handful of changes on this part of the amendments, all with the idea that we're trying to further narrow down local implementation to just those big picture issues that we think do merit your attention by way of the legislature intent in ever crafting the bill. The biggest change that we've made is we've essentially accepted with very little amendment on our own the joint requests that you had heard at our last meeting from Corte Madera and Larkspur. And I know we have Larkspur City Manager in attendance this evening. And essentially what this means is you would be creating a local exemption that says if local agencies want to create a joint power authorities for purposes of assuming fire protection services and that certain baseline conditions are met, for one, the associated labor organizations have consented, that the affected member agencies have all consented, that it's consistent with LAFCO policy. You're exempt. You don't have to go through an additional LAFCO review process. And again, that was essentially verbatim what the two municipalities had asked LAFCO to do. Now, we did make one tweak that we think is a friendly tweak, but nevertheless is a tweak, and we added an additional threshold that says this local exemption that Marin LAFCO is going to create for JPAs works, but we're going to cap it. We're going to cap it to those areas that have no larger than a 50,000 resident pool. And the reason we came up with this is it provides a nice connection, in your staff's opinion, to the legislation itself. Keep in mind, SB 239 created these thresholds at 20%. If a employment status as a result of a fire service contract changes, go to LAFCO. If the service boundary of a fire service contract changes by more than 20%, go to LAFCO. The reason why we came up with 50,000 as the cap is that basically represents 20% of the countywide population. So in our mind, it's a measured and appropriate threshold to place on the creation of JPAs. It certainly doesn't, in this case, bog down the one known discussion we are aware of between Corte Madera and Larkspur. But if something bigger were to come forward, maybe countywide, well then that would and should, in your staff's opinion, go through LAFCO. There are a couple of other changes that we made I just want to quickly highlight. We got a comment from Ross Valley Fire JPA, an existing JPA, about making it more explicit in our policies that renewals and extensions are exempt. So we've made that clarification. And also, in response to Commissioner McEntee, we've made it clear that any mutual aids involving the state and local agencies, well, those are exempt, and that was a good catch made earlier. So, I know we might have some comments, but if the commission had any questions for us.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Please.
I remember when we did the consolidation with Southern Marin and Sausalito. Does this new amendment that we're putting in, does this mean that the Larkspur, Corte Madera consolidation doesn't come before LAFCO at all?
It would not come through LAFCO. There would be a courtesy check by way of policies that staff would do on your behalf to verify, yes, these conditions have been met. You've provided us proof that labor has signed off, and that we could independently assess, yes, the population does not affect more than 50,000. You would be delegating that responsibility to your executive officer to confirm with Corte Madera and Larkspur, yes, you meet the exemption. This commission itself then would not formally have to take any action.
Okay, so it's just a ministerial.
Yeah.
And there would be something on file if it were to come up later that staff did the review and made the exemption.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
And that is because what happened in Sausalito was an annexation. And here, what we're talking about here is there aren't going to be boundary changes in a technical sense.
Correct.
Great.
Give it a chance. Yeah. So I want to thank Keen and staff and working with Corte Madera and Larkspur and bringing Marin policies to this AB 239 forward. Even though this is Senator Hertzberg that's developed our rule book, it seems like it just doesn't really necessarily apply here in Marin. So I think it is important for Marin to have their own policies and make some clarifications in how we're going to interpret and apply it. So again, thanks for staff. I think this is kind of in the realm of functional consolidation where fire departments can work together, and we should try to block that or bring it in or create additional time to do that. A couple things. One, this is for 25% of area or personnel, but Keenan mentioned a 20% too. So this new Marin County threshold is at 50,000, but we may want to put, since population may change, even though Marin County population changes slowly, as Keene mentioned, 50,000 or 20% of the Marin County population at the time. I think that may help in the future, so we don't have this artificial 50,000 number out there, and somebody wants to functionally consolidate and they're held up just because of that, and then have to come to our board.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. We have Chief Schertz here, good evening, and the city manager from Larkspur, Dan Swartz. Do you have any comments that you would like to make?
And if you do, could you go up to the mic, because otherwise you won't get it on tape. Yeah.
Well, Dan Swartz, City Manager Larkspur. First, just want to thank Keene, the staff, and the commissioners for considering our request for the changes to the policy. I think it's good public policy to adopt this exemption. And I don't have any qualms. I don't think Chief Schertz or my counterpart Todd Kuzma have any concerns with the friendly amendment tweak that Keene has proposed. I did want to make one general request, and that's that I think it's very appropriate that you're going to reach out to labor. But I think all the commissioners here who've had any experience dealing with labor organizations know that centralized labor organizations and the local guys and women who work for you in your agencies don't always see eye to eye on every single point. And so as you reach out to labor, we specifically crafted our proposal to you to suggest that if there is a negotiated agreement between the agency and its labor union, that should be sufficient for the policy. And I just want to encourage you to keep that part of the policy you adopt at the local agency level and not bring it up to organized labor at a regional level. I don't think it'd be appropriate, for example, whenever you're looking at a labor issue, to allow SEIU in Oakland to sway you if your local SEIU had said this is a good agreement. And likewise, as much as I love the local guys here, actually, I enjoy working with the fire guys quite a bit in our labor union. They're very thoughtful. Those of us who've worked elsewhere can tell you horror stories. I do think the local for the county and our guys may not always see eye to eye on every single point, and I think it's really important to draw a distinction.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Then we will close that, and there are no further comments or questions. And this also asks us for an action, and I think it's in a form of a resolution, isn't it, for this one?
No, not on this one, just simply majority approval that you're okay, you find these amendments better than the first go at it, and that you're ready to allow staff to do a formal public review amongst the public. And I did want to just follow up on the city manager's question. So staff had anticipated sending out a notice to labor, whatever, and again, I'm not familiar with the division of organized labor, but would it be the preference of the commission to keep it to whatever organized labor is in Marin County?
Just send it to local 1775 and.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously they're free to then talk with whoever they want.
Yeah, the international
like
is
a
involved.
limitation. Who they can speak with.
Okay, so, yeah, I'm sorry, Craig.
Yeah, so in regards to that point, you mentioned employment status under section 5614 limited to emergency personnel. I'm not sure if there needs to be a definition of, or if that's in agreement throughout Marin what emergency personnel is. If the job classifications are saying this way.
I had that same thing on my list. Great.
That could be something we could further engage the local agencies unless they wanted.
That might be important.
Maybe that's a
threshold.
Okay, Chief, sure.
I'm just, from reading it, I'm guessing what was intended there was as opposed to administrative staff, secretarial staff, and other staff that are not involved, that aren't safety members, as emergency responders.
And again, this presumes fire, not police.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that needs any further definition, non-safety, with that emergency
Would be-
non-safety personnel?
It's non-safety,
That
non-sworn.
might, non-safety might be a more standardized way to define it.
Terminology.
Okay.
I think
So-
the term of art that CalPERS uses is persons engaged in active fire suppression, fire prevention.
Non-safety seems
Okay, so we'll take that modification
We'll take that
there.
modification and add,
the part about that was a clarification for, I think it was Ross Valley, the contracts entered into before December 31st or recipient of LAFCO approval after December 31st. This is general provision number 3. It's just, the language is just a little difficult. If it could be just sort of, it says contracts or agreements for fire protection services entered into before December 31st, 2015, or recipient of LAFCO approval after December 31st, 2015. So
we can clean this up. So
yeah,
the intent is, hey, if you've already got this agreement before this bill ever came into effect, your grandfather,
yeah.
or if you came to LAFCO once, you got an approval, and you come extend it, so long as you're not triggering these other thresholds, you're good. And Commissioner Murray caught me, so I've been looking at this. So you're right. I did the math for this 50,000 based on 20%, not 25%. So we'll clean that up before we have final action on this.
Okay, so then.
So I'm sorry, the intent is for it to be 20 or 25?
It should be 25%. So the cap should go up a little bit.
Is there any reason to, I mean, 50 sounds like a nice round number. I don't have any particular, feeling one way or the other.
I only say 25 because that's, it's the percent that the good people in Sacramento decided to establish when they did the bill.
Okay, fine. That sounds fine.
Okay, so then if it's all right, we can, we've reviewed and updated the draft, so we can authorize staff to proceed with formal public review with the modifications that were offered tonight and return to the commission for final action at the June meeting.
So moved.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll take one step back and let's see here. Here we go. Item 9 is the adoption of the proposed work plan and operating budget for 2017-18. We'll consider adopting this proposed work plan and budget, and we'll then take final action at the June meeting. And let's see, we're going to be discussing proposed budget expenses. There is an increase, and that is due to some legal expenses that we encountered. And I want to thank the Budget Committee for working with Keene, Sashi, Dennis, and Craig. Thank you very much. Keene?
Yeah, well, I'll just very quickly, so this is really the first of 2 formal steps that under LAFCO law, you take in game planning for the upcoming fiscal year. And as Vice Chair Condon mentioned, tonight that means we've got a draft resolution for you that would do these 2 things, right? It would set a proposed work plan directing your activities for the 12 months, and then separately approve a proposed operating budget, funding those activities. Assuming you take some action tonight to approve these with whatever amendments or changes you desire, then staff will go about circulating these out to the public, as well as, importantly, our 42 funding agencies. And then the goal is to come back to you in June 8th for final action, which is step 2. What I thought I would do is just very quickly, 3 minutes or so, walk through both of these documents in terms of the highlights, and then certainly defer to the committee members for any added commentary they'd like to offer. It might be easier for the commission to look at both the proposed work plan and budget while I do this. And you can do that by, I think it's attachment 1, the draft resolution, and in particular, if you take a look at exhibits A and B, and the proposed work plan is exhibit A. And essentially what the committee tried to do was take the feedback in from the January 27th workshop. And the two themes we heard loud and clear was A, stay proactive, but B, and perhaps more definitively than we have in the past, do a better job at managing expectations. So that's why you see a proposed work plan that is a little lighter than the current or past work plans. We reduced volume by about a fourth, and that includes, okay, importantly, no new municipal service reviews have been scheduled as part of this work plan. We still have 3 service reviews that were late and that we've rolled over, but in terms of adding any new per our separately adopted study schedule, I think the message from the commission was let's fix or focus in on our existing commitments, and then let the policy committee take a look at resetting our study schedule so we become current going forward, and that should happen hopefully in the next few months. But the other key component of the work plan, not only did we reduce volume, but we've done some streamlining. So no longer are we breaking our projects into categories like regulatory, planning, administrative. We've got one list. The committee has gone about making its attempt to prioritize that list, and that's highlighted by our version of a top 10. Those are the projects that the committee believes should be focus number 1 for the 12 months. And again, I'd be happy to go into some detail. I think our agenda report does a pretty good job of detailing those top 10. And then separately, how we go about funding these, well, that gets you to the operating budget, Exhibit B. And as Vice Chair Condon mentioned, ultimately the committee is recommending a jump in our operating expenses by about 5.4%. And so that means we would go from $526,000 this year in operating expenses to $555,000 next year. So the difference of about $28,000. Now, what does that $28,000 buy you? Well, it keeps me and Rachel employed, number 1. It also adds some non-payroll enhancements that the committee believes are appropriate. Vice Chair Condon mentioned a lot of it goes to enhancing our legal services. Essentially what we're proposing is that you go from your budget of $10,000 this year up to $40,000 next year. It's a big jump for us here at this LAFCO, but I think it's actually comparable to what most LAFCOs budget for legal. And then also, and this is a staff favorite, we are finally going forward with purchasing those tablets as part of this effort to go paperless. I know there's some holdouts on the commission, but we'll work you through it.
We're going to have to get rid of all this paper?
That's right, that's right. It will make a big difference for us. So
I'm leaving just in time.
Yes, you are, Commissioner Bergen. So most of the time, the proposed enhancements to non-payroll would have a bigger jump than that 5.4% that I'm referencing. But this year, your payroll costs are stabilizing. In fact, they're going down. And a large part of that has to do with the anticipated change in one of our 3 budgeted positions. So that's helping us out quite a bit. There's 3 just kind of takeaway comments that I want to offer up before I pass it off to the committee members, because I think this is key in understanding the context here. And the first is, I think the committee all agrees that getting up to 555 brings Marin LAFCO closer to what its true operating cost needs are, without taking on any fat or unnecessary expenditures. I think it's still a lean budget relative to all your duties that you have. And then second, we're still a good deal. In comparative to what other Bay Area LAFCOs charge, we're still either at the mid-range or even below the mid-range of what other Bay Area LAFCOs costs are, despite the fact that with 65 local agencies, you have more governmental entities under your oversight, and you have to prepare studies and all that stuff therein than any of the other Bay Area LAFCOs, with the sole exception of Contra Costa. They have 2 more at 67, but their budget's at $900,000. So I still think we're a really good value. And then finally, as planned, your costs are stabilizing. If you recall, a few years ago when the commission made a decision to invest in the organizational capacity. You brought me in, you brought Rachel in, we got our own standalone office space. In 15-16, the budget expense went up 23-24%, okay? Last year in 16-17, it went up about 13%. This year again, it's going up, but it's going up by 5.4%. Next year, and we provided this in the spreadsheet, we think you're going to be within the CPI range at about 3.3%. So your costs are stabilizing. That's certainly a message we're going to take to the funding agencies. And as planned, you have this arc, and I think we're coming down into a more natural progression. So with that, I'll defer to Dennis, Sasha, Craig for any add-ons.
Okay, folks.
Yeah, so actually I think Dean and staff put together a good budget, and as Keene reflected, you have to see that we are in a range where there's quite a bit of work being done for a pretty low and value-oriented budget relative to other LAFCOs in the Bay Area. I also wanted to mention, the chair, it is a public hearing, so I guess officially we should be opening the public hearing and at some point closing the public hearing before we're done. So again, thanks to staff.
Yeah, I agree with Craig. I think the small additions also included a 3-year replacement plan for the computers for staff, which is an industry standard. And I think so. I think we brought the budget to a reasonable place. And as you mentioned, thereafter it'll be increasing at more of a CPI level. So thank you for that. And then the work plan, I really appreciate this top 10 kind of format. I think it's much easier to see what we're doing. You know, we only have the one bucket really that we're doing, you know, instead of the 3. It's useful to see, you know, the categories within that. But also wanted to point out, just as with the Central Marin Wastewater Services study, it's really 7 studies in one, but you're able to take advantage of some efficiency by doing it in a regional manner. And so the other ones that are on here too, even though there are only a couple on here, they are regional and will cover a greater number of agencies. So I think that's another way that our LAFCO is being efficient. And then I just wanted to make a comment on something that did make the top 10, that's number 11, which is evaluating a pension contract with CalPERS for our employees, and that's something I'd like to see happen if we end up having these fair cycles. It's next on the list. So I definitely appreciate having a top 10 list and sticking to our priorities, but just wanted to make a comment about that.
Thanks, Sashi. And I'm sorry for, I didn't mean to ignore you. Do you have any comments?
No, thank you. I was going to observe.
Okay. Any more questions, comments? No? Okay. Again, thank you, Dennis, Sashi, and Craig, for doing this, and Keene. This is good. So
we do need a formal motion to adopt the resolution.
So we need a motion to adopt a resolution of the Marin Local Agency Formation Commission adopting a proposed work plan and budget for fiscal year 2017-2018. Thank you. And second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. It carries. Thank you. And then we'll quickly.
Yeah, I was wondering.
My last vote.
5% of the time.
Oh. No, we have another vote here. This is the legislative report.
So I'll cover this pretty quickly. I think the agenda report is relatively firm on this, but it's a relatively quiet year in Sacramento right now in terms of known bills that impact LAFCOs, whether it be directly or indirectly. In fact, you know, of maybe the 20 bills that Cal LAFCO is tracking, really the committee sees only one bill that merits a particular position by this commission, and that's really just because Cal LAFCO is sponsoring it, and that's AB 464, And that's a bill that would address a blind spot in LAFCO law that none of us knew existed. We didn't know it existed until some clever lawyers, and this is a good learning experience for all of us, some lawyers in Stanislaus County who didn't do any, who never worked on anything with LAFCO, opened up the LAFCO law book, and they saw something that none of us saw before, which is apparently cities and districts cannot easily propose the annexation of lands that they already provide service to by way of outside service contracts. There's some wording in there that no one ever paid attention to, but to their credit, they saw it, the court upheld it, and so Cal LAFCO is quickly moving to address said blind spot, and so our recommendation is it makes sense, so let's go ahead and get a formal support position from this commission. So that's the only bill that we have for you to take a position on. Yeah, and I'll defer to Commissioner McEntee for a little more commentary on that.
So my only question about that one is, the description says that it's applied to all outside service contracts, but my reading of the actual text says that it specifically seems to talk about territories receiving electrical service under a service agreement approved by the PUC. So it seems to specifically call out electrical. So I just wanted, if we're going to write a letter of support, maybe we could clarify that it's to all outside service extensions, or whether it's just electric in the event that we've misinterpreted it. And I did reach out to one of the co-authors' offices, but I haven't heard back on that question. So.
Inclusio unius, that's exclusio alterius.
Okay, well.
You gotta watch out for that all the time, you know?
Dual annexation.
I did take Latin for 6 years.
How's that kind of dovetail with this AB 464?
So the dual annexation policy would not get affected because with annexations, that's not the issue. What would be the issue, we'll use Mr. Baker's district as an example. A few years ago, you approved an outside service extension for lands in South Petaluma for the district to formally serve.
We inherited that.
One way or the other, you came to LAFCO and you got an outside service approval. We could argue about that part.
Be careful how you say it.
And then, if under this reading of the court, if North Bend then wanted to legitimize the relationship and add it to their jurisdictional boundary, the way the court has interpreted this is no, they already serve it, so by way of the literal reading of the statute that allows for agencies to bring you annexation proposals, it's premised on this idea of providing new services. And so this would address that, again, perceived disallowance. It's a very nuanced bill. Again, no one at LAFCO had ever thought about this until, again, some clever people out of law school came up and sued Stanislaus.
How will it address it?
It will now just acknowledge that agencies, cities, and districts can annex lands that they already serve through outside service agreements.
They just flat out can't.
Right now, the way the statute's written, it's been interpreted that agencies can only seek annexation of unserved lands.
So you want to, the whole Cal LAFCO wants to undo that.
Cal LAFCO wants to make it explicitly clean for agencies to come to you and be able to annex land, which is good public policy.
Sure. Yeah. And did those clever clause lawyers in Modesto screw up something LAFCO did?
Again, it was groupthink. No one had ever thought to really.
Yeah, I understand that, but so who is the hero and who is the bum in the litigation?
Well, the hero is the lawyers for this electrical company that sued Stanislaus LAFCO for allowing someone to annex lands they were already serving, because this other PUD wanted to serve them.
So how would this work? And we're going to bring us right back to where we were in February for Summit Drive over in Country Club, Peacock Gap area.
Yeah. So
we're already, the Sanitary District 1 is already servicing these folks. Centerville Fire is already serving them through some sort of a mutual aid agreement. Does that mean that area will never be sanitary? I mean, how does this affect islands that are already being served?
you awkwardly have highlighted a bit of a heartburn for us. Now, luckily in that case, they never actually legitimized their service through an actual outside service agreement, i.e. somehow the neighbors figured out a way to connect to a public sewer main without anyone knowing. So staff would take the position that there's no official outside service occurring there. There's some neighbors who dug a lateral connection and tapped into a line that they shouldn't have. So, but you've made an appropriate connection about
Island.
Yeah. So that's 464, but we do want you to go ahead and formally authorize a support position for that. And last but not least, I did want to just get this on the radar. I know I've been talking to Lou about this item. Little Hoover Commission has fixated itself on special districts for many years. They've been holding hearings over the last 2 years, primarily on the topic of special districts. But by virtue of that inquiry, they've kind of looked at LAFCOs and whether or not LAFCOs have appropriately done their oversight duties. And one of the criticisms that's coming out of the Little Hoover Commission through their hearing process is that by and large, LAFCOs have not reduced the total number of special districts in California since 2000, when we were explicitly told to start doing this more proactively. And so, hey, the reality is they have the ability to initiate legislation through a direct vehicle assembly committee of local government. It seems very clear that they're interested in doing something. It could mean that LAFCO gets more powers and authority to effectuate consolidations or dissolutions, but it also could mean they decide, LAFCOs, you've dropped the ball too much on this. We're going to take this in-house in Sacramento and we'll just force consolidations and or dissolutions at our end. So there's an extreme here. It's something that merits some attention. Your staff has volunteered with a couple of other executive officers in the state to work with the Little Hoover Commission. I'm meeting with Senator or Assemblymember Levine's office to talk about this soon, but I know Lou correctly pointed this out when I wrote the staff report, that this seems like a bit of a harbinger. It could be. So.
Interesting.
Well, make sure you remind that our hands are not only clean, we have thousands of hours involved in that. It isn't as if we dropped the ball or we overlooked it or whatever. Reasonable minds differ.
We spent a whole lot of time on it. That's
we
right.
did.
Absolutely.
And resources.
And money.
And the districts did too.
And the districts spent money.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, so then we do need an action, and that would be to support
464 with the clarification that our support's premise on it applying to all outside services.
Okay?
Motion? I'll move the support letter from our executive officer with conditions that Commissioner proposed, and there's Senate Bill 4.
Thanks, Craig. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Vote.
Any opposed? Yeah. Okay, and then a report on the Cal LAFCO annual workshop.
So this year's Cal LAFCO 2017 annual, or staff workshop was in Fresno, and it began with a mobile workshop of the Forestiere Underground Gardens, followed by a visit to Fresno University's Department on Viticulture and Enology. There were some great breakout sessions for the workshop, one being mapping ducks using GIS data and ways to identify those. Also making sense out of these out-of-service agreements now. That was very helpful. And most importantly, my presentation on the panel, which was looking at MSR accountability through transparency. And I pretty much focused on web transparency and our grand jury report card, that web transparency report card. And looking to, relating that to LAFCO and how LAFCO should be accountable with, having good websites, putting their MSRs on websites, what to look for a good website, and how we can be accountable for ourselves, but also translate that to evaluating websites in our MSR through civic engagement of different agencies. And overall, it was a great session, or a great workshop, and I just want to thank the commission for allowing staff to go. I'm very grateful to go and to give us these funding opportunities to go, as well as it geared us up for next year, because this LAFCO will be hosting the 2018 workshop in San Rafael. So it was a good practice run through for us. And we are open to ideas, so you guys are also welcome to, you know, if you want to be a part of the process, you're more than welcome to do so. And I believe we might have a mobile workshop on visiting the San Quentin prison. So I would like to hear your feedback on that and hear some yay or nays. But overall, a very good workshop. So thank you, Commission.
Well, thank you, Rachel. And our executive officer report. Nothing to report. Any announcements or requests from our commissioners? Then I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting. Not yet, wait a minute. In honor of Chris Burdick. Okay, now.
I'll move that.
Okay, and meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for sticking out. It was a long meeting.